Hello and welcome back to another episode of the CanMar Morning Talk Show. My name is Louis. I'll be your host for today. Today's guest is Anne-Marie Fischer, who founded the company CannAWrite, a cannabis and psychedelics content and copywriting company. In this interview, we discuss Canada's cannabis industry, being a writer in the cannabis space, as well as being a female in a canna-bro-dominated culture. Anne-Marie Fischer unpacks all of these things and much more. I had a great time talking to her, and I hope you enjoy this episode of the CanMar Morning Talk Show. Okay, we are live. Anne-Marie, thank you so much for joining us here at the CanMar Morning Talk Show. How are you going?
Oh, I can't complain. It's a beautiful day here in Vancouver Island in BC.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Thanks for
Good to
having
hear.
me.
No, it's a pleasure. I wanted to begin by asking you about your company, CannAWrite. Now, what is CannAWrite and what does CannAWrite do?
Yeah, so my whole career in the cannabis industry kind of came serendipitously into my lap, but it was one of the most serendipitous, beautiful things that has ever come across my way. Um, I'm trained as an educator, so I have a Master of Education. I spent about 10 years in the higher education environment before moving to cannabis. I had a moment in my life where I was like, I don't think I want to work for anybody anymore. So I decided to pick up and move to Costa Rica. And I needed some way to, have make a living while I was traveling. So I picked up freelance writing, and that was around 2016. And just coincidentally, I was starting to get more contracts for cannabis clinics. And cannabis was already imminently being legalized. It was going to be legalized in 2018, so I just came to the idea that, wow, there seems to be a lot of freelance communications and writing work in the cannabis industry. And oh, great, I've been a cannabis consumer for about 15 years at that time. So I just married my two loves of cannabis and writing, and became a cannabis writer. And I have CannaWrite. So it's a full service company that serves cannabis companies across the world with content, from blogging to business plans to social media content to white papers to research. And it's been an absolute highlight of my career so far.
Wow. And a master's of education. So it seems quite a leap from that to cannabis. And was there any kind of stigma attached from, the education system moving to cannabis?
Good question. Yes. So while I was working in higher education, cannabis hadn't been legalized in Canada. It had been legalized for medical purposes since 2001, but stigma was still kind of is alive and well. So for years when I was working in higher education, I never told a soul that I that I used cannabis. And but at the same time, I was acquiring all these skills as an educator. I was learning about adult learning, how people like to take in information, research, and how to translate research to more palatable terms for the general public. So yes, I did make the leap. It was quite a big leap career wise, not so much concept wise, because I'm applying the Master of Education into cannabis now, where I'm helping to educate using those educational principles I've learned and applied before in education now to cannabis. Now, I did have it was interesting. When I did come out of the cannabis closet, that was in 2017, so about a year after I started working in cannabis. I just told my whole professional network, guess what? The whole time you've known me, I've been using cannabis. Now I'm working in the industry. And wouldn't you believe, so many people popped into my inbox saying, I use cannabis too. And if I had only known all these years, we probably could have smoked together. So the stigma's there, but there's more people that use it than admit it. So it's funny.
I've actually had a very similar experience. So I do cannabis writing, much like yourself. And once I got the
Nice.
job, I was very reticent to tell people precisely what I did. So I would say, I work in media, I do writing work. And slowly, because Australia is, several years behind Canada in terms of the stigma still remains, it's
Yes.
far from legal here.
Yes.
And slowly but surely, I would start telling people what I actually did. And virtually every time they'd be like, oh, I love smoking, or that's so cool. Like, I wish I was doing that. And so the responses I got were
Yeah,
almost the complete opposite from what I predicted due to the stigma.
what you'd
Almost
expect.
like the stigma was held by me in a sense. Like I saw it as like taboo to do. So
Right.
it's funny that you mentioned that.
Yeah, it's a shame that you unnecessarily held, right? Because we thought we would be judged, and
Mm.
lo and behold, we're
Yeah,
not.
exactly. And the tides
So,
are turning
yeah.
so quickly um, that it went from this kind of like street drug that people would use, and it had this stigma of like laziness and unemployability. And now it's like a multi-billion-dollar industry. Everyone is trying to get in on it,
Mhm.
celebrities included. So it's
Yep.
flipped. I mean, not overnight. You and I are in this industry, so it feels a lot more gradual to us probably than a lot of other people. But
Right.
I wanted to also ask you, having worked in more traditional spaces and now moving into the cannabis industry, what are the differences? Do you see cannabis as somewhat different to other industries simply because it's new or because it has that stigma around it? Are there any like big contrasts drawn between your previous work and now?
Yeah, a lot of it is that we tend to bring our whole selves to work in cannabis. There's often a very personal story that brought us to cannabis in the first place. So, whether we're users medicinally or part of our journey was helping somebody, maybe in our families, discovering cannabis through a tough time, or we all have a reason for coming to cannabis, and we bring our cannabis use to the table. We bring a sense of community to the table. So I feel like it's a more personalized industry when you want to get into it. On the flip side, there is a very impersonal part of the industry as well, because there are several public companies and whatnot, and cannabis has been commercialized quite a bit. So there's that very communal community aspect, and there's that very commercial aspect of cannabis. Um, as far as how it also differs, it is a wild west of an industry. None of us have gone through cannabis legalization before, so there's nobody really that knows exactly who or how we should be doing this. So we're building this industry together. We're all pioneers together, in addition to the people who have worked for decades before us. While these people have been advocating for legalization, we've been getting different skills. So we're bringing different skills to the table in this new industry, and we're all building it together. So there's no right or wrong. There's a lot of trial and error, and as a community, we're doing that together. So it's very cool to be a part of,
Mm. And I
as you
think
know.
something you definitely
Yeah.
touched upon is this commercialization of cannabis. I want to get into that a little bit later. But I think in your case,
Hmm.
Canada legalized in 2018, if I'm not mistaken, for recreational purposes. I
That's
feel I
that's
feel
right.
like intuitively, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. Not many, let's say, big players would have entered the space prior to legalization. There wasn't really, as far as I'm aware, people like gearing up, so to speak, as much. So you would have kind of a first mover advantage in terms of like expertise, because people will start naturally to look at the industry now and think, okay, there's some action here.
Yeah.
But you took, I would say, at least
Right.
a little bit of a risk, if not a large risk, in taking that deep dive into cannabis. Do you feel that at all?
I do. I feel like it was a risk because we were the first. Well, second, we have to really attribute Uruguay for being the first
Mm,
country. We're the first G7 country to legalize cannabis. Um, we did do it very, I wouldn't say prematurely. It was time to do it. However, the regulations were implemented maybe a little bit poorly. They were written by people who don't necessarily understand
mm,
cannabis. A lot of them were just kind of like, like spaghetti, throw a bunch of spaghetti against the wall, see what sticks. Um, there's been a bunch of bumps and hurdles and whatnot. I don't think like any of us would regret. But I think that legalization has happened. But I think there's a lot of examples, good and bad, that can be learned from both. For people for other countries, I mean, when you look at cannabis, or sorry, when you look at Canada's legalization, there's a lot of good and bad lessons that can be learned. And I think it's cool. Canada is like the nice little country that has always been known for, being nice and friendly. And it's nice to know that such a great country was the first one to step in and legalize cannabis and make an example and give Canada a reason to be watched. So I think it's really cool. I'm excited to be, I'm honored to be part of this country who legalized first. So,
Mm. Yeah, it's definitely courageous. And I think we're going
yeah.
to see, and we are seeing that kind of domino effect of, well, Canada's done it. So it can't be that bad. And now everyone's kind of looking at
Can't be that
it.
bad.
I want to bring it back more closely to your work and kind of for personal reasons, but I'm sure others will get benefit out of this. I mentioned I'm a cannabis writer. What advice would you give to people
Yeah.
like me and other writers perhaps looking to enter the cannabis space or have just entered the cannabis space?
Absolutely. First off, I would say that if you are just entering or looking to enter, is to take stock of what's already being done in the industry. So we do have like a number of communicators, PR agencies, PR firms, communications firms that have already been set up and publications that are really good examples. And you know, a lot of these have been doing it for years prior to legalization. So just take stock and I say respect what's been done in the industry. And You know, I guess a lot of the thing is too is just be very ready for a challenge. It's a very challenging industry. It's like I said before, it's a wild west. It's never been done before, so a lot of it's trial and error. A lot of it's not very linear work. If you are a cannabis writer, there's two ways that I feel like you can kind of achieve cannabis writer status or your goals as a cannabis writer. And two ways that I see that is through journalism or authorship. So if you want to write a book someday, or if you actually want to be a journalist who's writing on dailies or who's writing thought pieces, you can do that, but it's not necessarily going to be the one that's going to make you money right away. So the other way to do it is to work for other people and lend your gift of writing to other companies. So that's how I make my actual money to you know live and put a roof over my head and eat, is by working for other companies, by providing copy, blogs, um, press releases, educational documents, marketing documents. I write business plans. I do pitch decks. Anything that a company needs that requires professional communications, that's where I make my money. I do my dream work, and then you know my money fuels my dream work. Sorry, that work fuels my dream work, which is writing a book, which is journalism writing, which is going to a publication saying, hey, here's a pitch for a story, I'd love to write it. So there's those kind of two elements as far as cannabis writing, if you're interested in getting that in, so or into that, I mean. So yeah, the way to make money and the way to um dream while making money, sort of deal. And actually, I just wrote a book
Mm,
called Writing for the Legal Cannabis
yes.
Industry. Um, so yeah, so this book is literally my trade secrets on how I decided to become a cannabis writer to how I made my business, my communications business, a six-figure business in its second year. So um, I really would encourage anybody to. It's just on Amazon worldwide. Writing for the legal cannabis industry. All my secrets are there, and it gives you help on, or sorry, insights on creativity, discipline, steps on how to set yourself up as a business, building a website, what are the types of writing you could do as a cannabis writer, how to get clients, how to network, um, how to translate research, how to make sure that you're sourcing good material. Pretty much the whole gamut of if you want to become a cannabis writer for a living, it's right in this book.
Amazing. I wish I had that book when I began. It would have been a huge help. But yeah, everyone definitely check out that book. One thing I will say is I love the cover. I don't know what it is, but something about the cover, I actually saw it
Oh,
while researching for this interview. And I was like, there's something about it. It's just so simple, but it looks so nice. I've always loved certain designs, and I think that one looks awesome. So great job on the cover.
that's good to see. So I'll have to attribute the artist for sure. So the artist is a lovely woman in California. She's a Latinx Latina artist. Her Instagram handle is Green Garden SF.
Green
So
Garden.
I can't speak enough about her. Green Garden SF, and she did the cover art for this. So thank you for the compliment. I'm sure she'd be happy to hear that.
It looks awesome. I definitely have to give it a read. And did you find any difficulty in getting that published?
No, so this is where it's kind of fun. I
Okay.
self-published. I don't think people really understand, or if you want to call it self-publish, independent publish, however you want to call it. Um, Amazon and Kindle have partnered where you can literally create and self-publish your own books. So, basically, you create the manuscript, you upload it into the software, then you go in and edit all the, designate what are chapters, what are subtitles, create your cover, all that kind of stuff, and then you can upload it as an ebook or you can actually get print books. Um, you can sell it on Amazon and then you can also order author copies. So I think I paid like $2 a book, I think, and then I can take these books and then sell them at events or in my network or on my own website. So it's pretty a niche book, so I wouldn't really think of a publisher asking me, like, "Can you write a book about writing
Mm.
about the cannabis industry?" So I just did it myself.
Well, that's great.
But it just goes to show that if you wanna write a book, you can.
Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's one of the beauties, I guess, of the digital age is all of the, well, in a lot of senses, information has been democratized. There's no kind of, this is the channel you have
Right.
to go through. It's, if you want to do something, ultimately,
100%.
it's up to you how much you persevered to do that thing. So it's awesome to see that you've basically,
Absolutely.
you're a one man army, one woman army, uh, almost every sense, it seems. So that's very cool. I also wanted to ask
Oh,
you, which
thank
is
you.
maybe something you kind of touched on before, but what is the most interesting thing about the cannabis space and the most interesting thing you've learned in the cannabis space?
I think the most interesting thing about the cannabis space is that you never stop learning. I've been doing working on this plant for 5 years. Professionally, I've had an appreciation for it for 20 years now, but professionally, I've been working in this space for 5 years. I work no shorter than 12, 14, sometimes 16 hours a day, and I'm learning something about the plant every single day. Um, it keeps revealing itself to us, and I feel like I'm never gonna get bored from the plant. And what I like about cannabis, it's not just about the plant. It's about an industry. It's about medicine. It's about legalities. It's about advocacy. It's about agriculture and
Mm,
cultivation. So there's so many areas that you can explore off of cannabis. Um, what I find interesting about the cannabis industry is again, I think we talked to this before, is a commercialization of the plant. I teeter on the sacredness of the plant and what the plant has meant for and does continue to mean for centuries and for long time before us. It's a very spiritual plant. It's a healer. It's a communal sacred ritual plant, but now it's also hitting the stock market and people are getting rich off of it. So I feel it's very interesting that it teeters the spirituality, health, yet like very big economic driver at the same time. So,
yeah, this is something we've
so I'm just
seen
gonna
in the psychedelic space as well, which for I didn't even know how long, for hundreds of years, if not thousands, psychedelics have been used in this kind of ritualistic, indigenous context.
right,
And I believe this is still occurring, but definitely a few years ago, you would hear about microdosing in Silicon Valley. So it's this very funny contrast between like a sacred setting where it's all about spiritual understanding and learning about yourself and the world to kind of gaming it as a tool to make money through technology. So it's a very funny dichotomy. I
right.
think cannabis is much the same.
It's
Um,
a
and it
dichotomy.
kind of leads me into
Yeah.
my next question, which is where do you see the industry headed? And you've touched upon this next point, but in what ways is that vision that you see for the trajectory of the industry? In what ways is that veering from where you want it to be heading?
Yeah. So first of all, I think I think there's two aspects I see it going or where I would like to see it go. First is worldwide
Hmm.
legalization. Of course, I don't know if I'll ever see that in my lifetime or our lifetime, but we can sure as hell
Fingers
try to see
crossed.
it. And If there's any time it's to be alive, it's right now. We're watching so many amazing things across the board happening. So worldwide legalization. The second thing I'd like to see is the takeover of pharma by
Mm,
cannabinoids and the takeover of medicine. And I wouldn't say takeover. I would say more coexisting of plant medicine with traditional medicine. Um I think that if cannabinoids and the endocannabinoid system and everything were studied a little bit more, accepted into more medical circles, and research, and more, funding was directed towards research, we would realize that we've had the secrets to human health under our nose this whole time on Earth. And it's just the secrets are in that plant. So I just want to see more attention turned to the medicinal benefits of it, whether that's research, funding, legalization, changing of attitudes, or just individuals taking it upon themselves to look at cannabis in their lives. I'd love to see um, cannabis take over the world.
mm. Well, the
So,
pharmaceutical point is it's a tough one because obviously they have endless money, they have endless influence and lobbying power. But we've also seen a little bit of damage done by big pharma in some respects. And, one of the probably most fascinating components of cannabis to me in the industry is its capacity to hopefully shift a lot of people away from traditional like opioid medications and more addictive pharmaceutical drugs onto cannabinoid medicines, which admittedly won't be as good for pain killing in a lot of respects, but they will alleviate
mhm,
enough pain that hopefully people can use these less addictive medicines that are safer and have less of a
absolutely.
risk of overdose than just some kind of pharmaceutical opioid. But the concern I have, and I'm sure you share this, is that, as I said, Big Pharma has a lot of money, a lot of influence. There isn't really much that I can see to stop them simply taking over medicinal cannabis. Do you see any ways around that, or do you see it as
Right.
kind of an inevitability?
I think unfortunately it is going to be inevitable because it's good. I think they're going to take them if you can't beat them, join them
Mm,
attitude. Like, of course, if something is such a big rival, they're going to want to capitalize and almost try to monopolize on that. So I think, but at the same time, I think there's space still for recreational. There's space for pharma. There's space for research and medicinal. So like it's I don't know. It's hard to tell into the future, but of course, like we're already seeing pharmacy and pharmaceuticals creeping into cannabis. So I think it's inevitable, but I think there's still room for everybody at the cannabis table.
And you've mentioned
So
previously, do you see kind of a lack of minorities within the industry? And also this term cannabros. Can you expand upon both of those?
you heard me talking about
Yes.
that. Yes. Okay, so first of all, I'll touch on lack of diversity. So statistically, there's a lack of BIPOC, so Black, Indigenous, people of color representation in the industry. In the United States, it's just under 5% of cannabis businesses are owned by Black, Indigenous, or people of color. So that is like pretty shocking when you look at the demographics of the United States and the cannabis industry. So we need to do more in social equity, and not use social equity as a buzzword
Mm,
because we've been tossing that around a lot. And like, what does social equity actually mean? Is it state or provincial or national programs that are sponsoring BIPOC individuals into uh, getting into cannabis businesses, or is it education? Um, is it just better hiring practices? What does social equity actually look like? And I think it's really neat in Canada because we have a opportunity to redefine that and define that for Canada. The statistics, I don't have the exact statistics about how many BIPOC people are cannabis owners in Canada, but I would imagine it would be reflective of the United States industry. Women also. There's 31% of the C-level positions are held by women in cannabis. And that's better than the average, which kind of falls around 21% of C-level positions or across all industries. So, when you stack it up against other industries, women are doing really well in cannabis, but 31%, when you look at the fact that women represent half of consumers in cannabis, we should also be half of the CEOs and C-level positions in cannabis as well. Canna bros. So yeah, it's funny. It's a funny term. And I certainly didn't coin it. I don't know where I even heard about it from. Bros to me are the dudes. Okay, well we all know
Mm,
bro culture, like hey buddy, like that's something that's been perpetuated where it's an old boys club, like no girls allowed. Let's throw our money, our power, and our influence around kind of deal. Bro culture. It's just Canna Bros is bro culture in the cannabis industry. So it's these bands of brothers that are grow buddies who are dominating cultivation jobs and not letting the women take the jobs, or these guys who are coming in, maybe never even had a experience with the plant before and just tossing
mm,
money at it, not recognizing that there's a whole history of an industry to be honored and to be carefully thought about when you're entering into the industry. So I've unfortunately come across some canna bros in my career, but our professional relationships don't usually last very long, and I've been known to accidentally call somebody a canna bro to their face. So I'm going to try to keep that one under wraps, but it is kind of a term or like a philosophy of like just don't be a dick in the cannabis industry, and you'll be okay.
mm.
People will like you a lot better.
Yeah, well, it definitely ties, it's parallel to the issue with pharma in a lot of senses that, on the one hand, you have people, often minorities, in prison currently for, using or dealing cannabis prior to legalization. And then on the other hand, you have people who are entering from different industries with a lot of money, perhaps no passion for the plant, but a passion
Hmm.
for money,
Hmm.
capitalizing on it, and then excluding the people who were using it before it was cool. So
1,000%.
yeah, it's a tough
You nailed
situation.
it right on the head. That's exactly it.
It
Yeah, why are people sitting in jail for maybe passing a gram to their buddy, while dude bro from butt fuck, uh, part of my language, but from wherever can just throw money into the industry, sit at a mahogany desk and collect money. It just doesn't seem fair. It's a dichotomy, another one of those dichotomies that you brought up. So yeah, the industry is full of dichotomy.
mm. Well, then what would you say to women entering the cannabis space? Does that advice that you gave me earlier, which was kind of writing specific, but just more generally, do you have advice for women looking to enter the space, and are there challenges that they should look out for, perhaps other than cannabis?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, just the fact Canna exist, but they're not a make or break of the industry, that's for sure. Um, the I think it's really cool because women have an industry that is almost a blank slate, and we have an opportunity to recreate what employment and what the job um scope field, I guess, what employment and everything should look like. Women should have always had a leading role at the table, or if not leading, equal seat at the table. Um, and this is a new industry. There are more opportunities for women to enter C-level positions than any other industry because there's so many diverse types of jobs that are require leadership, whether it's cultivation, whether it's consulting, whether it's leadership, whether it's science, marketing, human resources. There's tons of opportunities for women who have excelled in other industries to come into this new industry and really push the envelope on the number of women holding C-level positions. The other thing I would say is just be ready for a challenge, but also know that you're going to be in very good company of other women who are struggling and who understand it's a tough industry to break into. But as a woman, I've never felt so supported by other women than in this industry. So it's a beautiful thing to be a part of. And I'm so proud of being part of the industry that's moving the needle for women.
Well, I think, much like Canada carving a path for the rest of the world, I think you are, and other women like you are carving a path for other women to see not only can you enter this industry, but you can just basically strong arm your way in and say, I'm doing whatever the hell I want and no one can stop me. And if you don't want to publish my book, I'll publish my book. Um, I love that
Exactly.
message.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, one of our we have this wonderful influencer. We call her our Canna Queen, Jackie Childs here in Canada, and she always says if you're not invited to the table, make your own
Mm.
table. So, so that's what we're doing is just we see opportunities and we're able to just pounce on them, and it requires fearlessness and a little bit of gall and a little bit of thick skin and resilience, but if you dream it, you can do it in this industry, and that's what I love about it.
Well, one of my final questions, do you think you just naturally have goal and tenacity, or do you think this is something that you've had to develop through the cannabis industry?
Good question. Good question. Yes, I've always been a go-getter. I've always been an achiever. I've always been like if I think about it, there's nothing stopping me. At the same time, I have my challenges. I live with ADHD. So even sitting down to actually focus to do my work is a challenge. So I have all the drive in the world, but sometimes the actual work of it is really hard. And just like anybody, I come across roadblocks. I come across days that I don't want to get up and do my work. There's really hard days, but um at the end of the day, I love my work. I'm the master of my own ship. Despite the challenges, there's always something exciting. It's the it's the people, and it's the fact that the cannabis plant keeps revealing itself to people and to us that keeps the fuel in my tank, really. So, um, I couldn't ask for a better career.
Amazing. Well, Anne-Marie, thank you so much for joining us at the CanMar Morning Talk Show. Where can people find you? Where can people
Thank
find you,
you.
your work, your book, everything?
Awesome. So yes, so I can be found across all social platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at CannAWrite, CannAnnAWRITE. And then my book is Writing for the Legal Cannabis Industry. You just type that into Amazon, wherever you are worldwide. You can get it on Kindle or paperback version.
Perfect. Well, thank you so
Oh,
much
and I'm at
for joining.
CannAWrite.net, my website.
CannaWrite.net.
Thank you.
Well, that is a wrap for our latest episode with Anne-Marie Fischer from CannaWrite. We hope you enjoyed that episode here at the CanMar Morning Talk Show. And be sure to check us out on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram at CanMar Events, as well as checking out the CanMar Community Hub, which will allow you to network with cannabis influencers, professionals, and experts alike. Until next time, CanMar is bringing you endless opportunities.